Hello, everyone, and welcome in to the Go 24/7 podcast. My name is Bryce Koon alongside Glen West. And if you're watching this, you're tuning in on a Sunday when we're recording this, but a lot of you are going to be seeing this on Monday. So we say happy Monday to you as well. And Glen, we're back in the friendly confines of our own homes. No more sitting next to each other like we were last week in Dallas, but that's okay. We're going to see each other soon enough in person once again. But hey, this is a recruiting pod, and LSU went 2 for 3 this past couple days, and the two guys that they got are big time playmakers. And Glenn, even the third guy that they didn't get, still a long ways to go for Jabori Antoine. So let's kick it off and talk a little bit about the guy that they got and the big fish they pulled in. Glenn, we could look back, and if LSU wins a national championship in 2 years, we could say that this was a defining moment of building a class that Brian Kelly needed to get a position of need. The word desperation is not one I want to use, but man, they sure needed this. DJ Pickett joins the fold. Your thoughts? I know we wrote about it. We've talked about it a little bit, but just your thoughts on the addition of DJ Pickett and really kind of the groundwork that was done here by Corey Raymond.
Yeah, I think if you kind of came into the summer, you heard us say, you heard us write a ton that there were two position groups that LSU really needed to lock in on, make some traction up for, and that was the defensive line and in the secondary, at cornerback in particular. You got the four defensive linemen a couple weeks ago. That should not be overstated how important that Jesse Harrell, Damian Shanklin, Brandon Brown, Zion Williams, those four additions are. And they really kind of kicked you off into what has become a really strong summer now for LSU. But the one that puts it over the edge for me clearly is DJ Pickett. I mean, a 5-star player, I believe number 9 on our service, number 10 overall player in the country, 6'4", 205 pounds. If you guys haven't gone and listened to Bryce's instant reaction to it, he's got some great stuff up in on our pod from a couple days ago, where he kind of breaks down a little bit of Underwood of Pickett's film. But I mean, look, I say Underwood, but if we're talking about like impact pieces to this program outside of the quarterback, I don't know that LSU could have done or could have a much more important signing in this 2025 class than DJ Pickett. When you look
Yeah.
at the position of need, the talent, the potential, all that stuff, is just off the charts for him. And LSU was in a battle here. And I think the one thing that you and I have talked about off camera, off site, and then have mentioned a little bit here over the last couple of days as this became reality, this is a huge win for LSU on the national scope in terms of NIL branding, in terms of being competitive for those national prospects. I mean, look, LSU can always be competitive for Louisiana players. Like, they are going to go and they're going to make those relationships happen. They're going to, do their best to get those kinds of guys in here. And they've done a really nice job of that under the first couple of years of Brian Kelly. But what this Pickett addition means to me is that you can go into another state, you can build that relationship that Corey Raymond has, do all the extra things to go the extra mile to get this kind of player on board, make your pitch in terms of resources and what, you can offer a player out of state of this caliber to come in and play right away. I mean, look, I think if DJ Pickett comes here, they get through December and they sign him, this is going to be a player who absolutely will walk in and be instantly an immediate contributor. Like, you look at the cornerback room right now, they have some veterans, they have a couple of young guys that they're excited about, but this is the kind of player that can help change that room in an instant. And I think that LSU should and will give him every opportunity to do that once he's on campus. So this is an absolute home run addition for LSU, grand slam, however you want to pronounce it. And look, I think he does I think what he does, like I said, more than anything, is just give you that assurance that LSU can play with the big boys when they really want to and when they feel like the prospect is worth it. And they've done a really nice job of that. Obviously, with this Pickett edition, with Derrik Meadows, a 5-star receiver, like they've built really strong relationships with other players that even they haven't, I don't want to say struck out on, but they've just haven't landed, and they've built a strong relationship with Decorian Moore. Like, I think that was a legitimate deal for like a year for him. Like he wanted to play at LSU, and then when he kind of branched out and got all these other schools interested in him, he kind of had some other thoughts. But they've done a great job of building these relationships with these players, and we can get into it a little bit later in the pod. They have some other ones that are still out there that I think are very real possibilities. But right now, you're standing at the number 4 class in the country. You've got 3 5-stars. You've got a guy in Harlan Berry who I think all of us believe this side is a 5-star player, even though maybe he hasn't gotten that nod yet from us on the national side. I think this is a elite class, and like you mentioned, a class that if 2 or 3 years from now breaks the right way for LSU. You look back on and you say these are kind of the foundation, the groundwork that's being laid here for the future is really, really strong in this class.
Yeah, you kind of hinted at it, but I mentioned in that kind of instant reaction podcast of the biggest thing I learned with DJ Pickett, and we'll talk about Derrik Meadows here in a second, is that the and I'm writing about this as we speak this afternoon and for a piece this week that you should check out is the marriage of the TAF and Bayou traditions. I think it's a indicator to a lot of people that NIL at LSU is becoming more organized. It was never going to be able to happen overnight, Glenn. We know, but starting to get that path. And so, if you're having success, which look, we know this is a part of the recruitment process. It's not a secret to anybody. It's not a knock against the kids for taking advantage of what they've been able to accomplish. It's what the market dictates. But to be able to go get DJ Pickett and then Derrik Meadows, two guys that are not a lot of ties to the state of Louisiana in general. I just think that that's massive in terms of saying, okay, when we want to, and I use the word we as Brian Kelly, a lot of other guys in that building, player personnel people in charge with NIL, like when we identify that the risk reward is worth us going to get this guy in terms of NIL push and the combination of relationships, which I think LSU is very, very good at to begin with, probably one of the best in the country. When you marry those two things together and they're on the same page, you get results like what you saw with DJ Pickett and Derrik Meadows. And so, there's been a lot of talk about where is LSU's NIL game, and I think, the conversation that that Brian Kelly had with Jock over at WAFB earlier in the offseason definitely spurred up some conversation. We heard as much, during SEC media days from some of the other teams' reporters and everything. But I just think that, Glenn, when you see kind of how things are coming together, if LSU's recruiting already like this, imagine when this thing really starts to get rolling and they really kind of get this thing. Because I would say, and I'm not an expert on it, I don't know if you are either, but this is kind of the infant stages of this NIL really being organized, in my opinion. And you just got two of the better talents. We can talk about Derrik Meadows now, but I think that's a big reason why you went and got DJ Pickett too.
Yeah, I think LSU's putting its money where its mouth is, and what have we religiously heard from Brian Kelly, from people in the program over the last several months and really the last year? They're not going to overpay for a transfer portal player that's just a quick fix. But what they will do is they will invest resources in retaining their players on the current roster. You've seen that at many positions across LSU's roster the last couple of years. Not the interior defensive line, but you've seen it at other positions, at pretty much every other position on the roster. And they'll be very competitive with their resources and their opportunities for freshmen, for high school talent, for high school players and high school talent. And I think there's no greater example of that than what they're doing with this class. I mean, they have taken it up a notch. I'm writing a piece, and by the time many people see this, it'll already be up. You look at the class, player ratings for this class. LSU is holding an average player rating of 93.83, which is number 3 in the country, behind, I believe, just Alabama and Oregon. Those are two teams that maybe are above LSU with the player rating system right now on 24/7. But with 18 commitments, LSU is proving that they are putting quality here in addition to quantity, because I do think the quantity is going to come. You're going to get a couple more guys, 6, 7, 8, 9 more players in this class. I think that this is the big nucleus though of what you've done so far is 93.83 in terms of their average player rating, in terms of all the prospects that are kind of combined and that are on board right now. So they are proving that they can go out and they can find guys that one of the things that they did really well these last couple cycles was getting in on guys early enough and then they springboarded after they'd already committed to LSU. Kylan Billiott's a great example of that. They've done that a couple of times. Now you're going in and you're getting guys that are already highly regarded, highly thought of, have been on the recruiting scene for a number of years now. That is a huge step, I think, in what you're talking about here with, the NIL resources and being competitive in that market. This was an eye opener for sure. I thought that LSU had a chance. I did not have them as the favorites a day or two before this announcement happened for Pickett, but I was texting with another buddy of ours on the beat, like, never count Corey Raymond out, never count LSU out for some of these guys. And I think that this is a really a foundational kind of decision for LSU to get him on board. Now you have to get through December, you have to get him signed, you have to do all the things that are required to make sure that this class stays intact. And I think a big part of that will be just continuing to build those relationships, continuing to be bring them in for fall games, for visits and stuff. You don't want to let something like what happened with Antoine happen again, and one of these players kind of doesn't feel the love and walks out the door. So just got to stay on all these guys. But if LSU does that and they have this foundation, this core in place when the December signing period gets here, it is a hell of a start for LSU in terms of just where they are, where they're going, what their foundation looks like here in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And then obviously on Saturday they go, they bat 500, which Jay Johnson would tell you is pretty good. With two guys, they get obviously Derrik Meadows. Glenn, I wrote up on him, did the instant reaction podcast. This is the definition of a big-bodied receiver. This is a guy that Teron Francis is, the guy they call man-child. He's obviously a big threat too. But I think now you have two guys that are physical. I see a guy that he does really well at the point of attack in terms of, getting those 50-50 balls, does a good job of, he's obviously a track guy too. So we're not discounting this guy. He doesn't have speed, but it's more of the fact that this kid is just a well-rounded player, has the physical capabilities to be, a red zone threat nearly immediately. That's what Greg Biggins of 24/7 Sports kind of wrote. Your thoughts on Derrik Meadows, what he brings to this offense in a class that, I said it yesterday, Glenn. I mean, this is a class that when you look at elite skill positions on the offensive side of the football, they have checked nearly every box now. I imagine they're still going to be in a play for maybe a wide receiver or two, but the running back position, 1 5-star, 1 4-star, the quarterback, the best player in the country. I mean, you are checking the box, kind of what you mentioned on the defensive side of the football earlier. This is just another feather in the cap for Cortez Hankton, who continues to recruit at a high level. And Glenn, I'll pat you on the back. You said, hey, I'm not worrying about the wide receiver recruiting. LSU is going to find a couple guys, and they get Derrik Meadows.
Yeah, another really fantastic addition, and somebody that when you talk to industry people, guys in the recruiting space, his stats in the high school ranks, they don't exactly add up to what they think he can be and will be at the next level. I believe he had around 400 yards receiving last year at Bishop Gorman in Las Vegas. Everybody that I talk to say he absolutely tears up the 7-on-7 scene. He does a great job again in camps and tournaments and all these other things in the off season that have helped kind of skyrocket him up into this 5-star status at 24/7. And you mentioned it, man, 6'5", 6'6", 200 pounds. He looks like he's gotten bigger since the last time we kind of got photos and video of him. He's looked a lot bigger this offseason. He's a fluid runner. He's exactly what I think you needed in this class in terms of a big-bodied receiver to go along with a guy like Teron Francis. And look, I don't think LSU's done. They're going to continue to pursue some of these options, which we'll get into here in a minute. But yeah, look, the Meadows deal, you had a feeling that it was kind of turning LSU's way. This was one that you could have predicted, I think, a couple weeks in advance. He was always thought highly of LSU since they got in on him, and they got in on him a little bit later. I think they offered him back in February. They got him on campus a couple times in the spring. They got him on campus for an official visit in June. And that Hankton relationship was really key. I think Bryce Underwood really stepped up his game in terms of interacting with Meadows and reaching out to him. Those two is obviously a big part there with the quarterback receiver relationship. So, look, he's another one that you go to another state in a state that you don't really see, a ton of talent come out of every single year in Las Vegas, in Nevada, and you go out and you get another big time national recruit that I think that just gives you even further evidence that LSU really is kind of stepping up its game in terms of the resources it can offer outside of football. I think they've done a really nice job, obviously, with these two additions in Pickett and Meadows. We'll see if they can continue building on this momentum. I think that they have the Bayou Splash here coming up on Friday. That'll be a great opportunity to get not only all the commits in and kind of reaffirm that relationship with all those guys, but bring in a couple of high profile targets as well. Like, I think that there's a couple of guys that, Sonny's already, gotten our board and we got an early kind of look at who could potentially be coming in this weekend. There's some exciting names on there. But I also want to go back to something you just mentioned, and it does feel like that at every position on the roster, maybe outside of safety, they have a foundation in terms of a core piece at every position. Like, you look at quarterback, it's Bryce Underwood. You look at running back, it's Harlan Berry and Lindsey, JT Lindsey. The offensive line, you've got Koon, you've got Miller, you've got Harper. The defensive line, you've got Shanklin and Harold and all these guys. And linebacker, you talk about Keelan Moses and Charles Ross, and cornerback now with Pickett. Like, they have kind of the lead dog, or the top guys that you want to kind of represent a position room in pretty much every position on the roster. Now I think is the time where you can go and get greedy here over the next 5 months, make your pitches to a bunch of these high profile guys that that are still uncommitted, that are seeing LSU kind of take this thing by storm and really make a case for number 1, number 2, number 3 kind of class. This is a time where LSU, I think, can be really aggressive because they have done such a good job at building the foundation of this class.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I agree with the foundation's there. Let's talk a little bit about the guy on Saturday that they did not get, Jabari Antoine. We've mentioned his name a couple times. Glenn, we've talked about this a lot on the board, off air. Kind of felt like Miami was the leader, especially after Antoine decommitted. The conversations were still there between he and Corey Raymond. But I said this, and I tweeted this out yesterday and put it on the message board. Yes, Jabari Antoine chose Miami over LSU yesterday, but the fact that LSU is still going to be holding an OV, as well as probably an opportunity to get him there for a couple unofficial visits during the season, that is like to me, this card, this big play card that LSU has in their back pocket. They could wait this thing out till a couple weeks before signing day and get him in for one of those big games, the Alabama game there in November. But when you look at this, Glenn, what's maybe the level of concern? And as Sonny had said on our message board, and it's a good chance for people to go check this out, you have to be cautious about how you're going to pour into NIL. We talked about it with a couple other guys. If that's something Antoine is going to be focused on, you're setting a precedent for in-state kids of what you could be doing. So your thoughts on Antoine, level of concern, and how much, how effective you think that OV to LSU could be in the fall?
Yeah, it could be very, it could be up there because, I think that LSU, they're not going to stop recruiting somebody that was, from a place that Corey Raymond literally grew up. And you saw when LSU hired Corey Raymond, within 2 or 3 weeks, I believe Antoine was committed to the program. So I think there's a built up relationship there. I don't know exactly what went south for LSU to kind of lose that commitment. It could have been just them not keeping up in touch with him as much as maybe he thought they should have. But I think this is a player that you absolutely stay on in the state. I think he's a top 3 or 4 player in the state this year when looking at the different services and just the importance of the cornerback position to get right. LSU, I think, really wants him to be a part of this class. They'll continue recruiting him. But I don't want to say it's a concern just because I think you've done a really nice job. Like, because if you're going to lose a guy like that from in-state, you better go steal someone from out of state that is very highly regarded. And LSU did that with Pickett. Like, I mean, Pickett was considering Miami as well. Like, Pickett was, I think it was Florida State, Miami, and LSU for Pickett, or was it Oregon for Oregon? I think it was Oregon, Miami, and LSU for Pickett. And so, there's to go into Florida and to get that guy, that top 10 kind of guy, I think it stings to lose Antoine let him go out of state, but I think it lessens the blow when you're able to bring a guy like Pickett in to kind of really take charge of that group and be the big fish land of that position room. So yeah, I think it stings a little bit, but LSU won't stop giving up. They've got a guy in Aiden Anding, 3-star corner from Ruston that I think makes a lot of sense for LSU to go after now. I think there's a couple other guys that they'll continue to recruit hard. Sonny put the name out, Cade Phillips. I know he's committed to Texas right now, but he's a 4-star corner that Corey Raymond really likes as well. So there's some names out there that LSU can kind of, drop in here with Pickett that I think makes this an even stronger class for the cornerback room. But I think the one group where I think LSU probably wants to get at least a couple more guys in is at safety. I think safety is a room where you look at, you got CJ Jim Coyley who's still out there, but you've got Jace Thomas committed. That's one. I think you'd probably like to add 1 or 2 more safeties because that is a pretty old. That's an older room in terms of guys that are going to be on the field next year. Major Burns, Sage Ryan, Jordan Gilbert. Those are all guys that could theoretically leave after this year, and so you want to have a nice group of players following up behind them to keep that well pretty deep.
Yeah, CJ Jim Coley, you mentioned him. He's going to choose on August the 8th his Final Four: LSU, Stanford, Alabama, and Tennessee. You mentioned Aiden Anding, and another guy that Sonny passed along, you go check it out, is Landon Hammond out of Opelousas. So, look, another in-state guy. He's got good length, around 6 foot, 6'1". Needs to put on some weight in terms of we've got him at 150. I'm sure that he's 155, 160, something like that. But you look at this room, I agree with you. The linebacker room feels set. Defensive line, Walter Mathis is a guy to continue to monitor, whenever he wants to make a decision. But like you said, Glenn, safety's where you could add. But I'll tell you one thing, it's nice to roll into the regular season and get ready for a Bayou Splash event, which a lot of your commits are going to be there. A Nanding's going to be there, and a couple of names that'll continue to trickle in. Look, it's nice to roll into that event with a core class. I think that for every program out there, when you have these end of summer events right in between these 2 dead periods, man, if you can not only get your committed guys on campus, but have a nice group of them to where you're kind of filling out around the edges, that's pretty good. And that's kind of the status LSU is going to roll in with, especially by getting Meadows and Pickett in the fold before that July 26th event.
Yeah, we're going to be, tracking some names here over the next day or two as well. I think one to keep an eye on. Sonny's kind of already put it in that piece. Jamie French, the 5-star receiver out of Texas. Bryce Underwood's coming in this weekend. We have confirmed that. French and Underwood are pretty tight, and I know that the buzz right now is around Texas. It's around French staying in state or potentially going up to Ohio State for his college career. I think Underwood's going to make his best pitch if they get French on the campus. This weekend. I think Underwood, Cortez Hankton, Joe Sloan, the offensive staff, everybody there will do their best to try to make that pitch to Jamie French, and we'll see kind of what happens there. This is the kind of last couple of visits that these prospects are going to be getting in before settling into their senior seasons. I know a trend here recently has been for a lot of these guys to make those decisions before their senior year. We'll see if anything trickles down as some of these uncommitted players kind of go through their final visits and maybe whittle down those decisions. So it'll be a busy time. We're, I think, kind of in the last couple weeks here where there won't be there, where we hope there won't be, some huge news breaking every couple of days. I know we're kind of already off to a bad start on that this week, but yeah, we'll keep everybody abreast of what's happening. But yeah, I think Jamie French is a name to watch. Anquan Fagans, the safety, I think is really down to LSU Auburn right now before he makes his decision here. I believe in about a week or two. I think it's at the end of this month when Fagans makes his commitment. So there's a lot of names out there, and that's a safety that would fill a huge void if LSU could get him in for a visit and really kind of maybe make that final push over Auburn if they're able to do so. So yeah, lots of positive stuff coming on right now for LSU, and they've done a really nice job with this class, really nice job of building it up, and now we just gotta wait for some more dominoes to fall.
Yeah, you talked about that Bayou Splash event. One name we haven't mentioned, and we'll round it out here, Jonah Williams. That's a big 5-star talent that's going to potentially be in town. And look, Williams had some some fun / cryptic tweets after LSU won the battle over DJ Pickett. One of them saying, unlimited NIL fund, huh? Obviously talking about what Oregon has claimed to have with Phil Knight and the Nike deals up there. But, Glenn, we'll end it with this. Jonah Williams, I mean, if you're LSU, you've had him on campus for the OV. Jay Johnson has been involved with this as well on the baseball side of things. I don't know how much more of a better foot you can put forward with Jonah Williams. And I will tell you, I've talked with a couple of folks. I think that LSU feels kind of good about where they stand with Jonah. It's going to be his decision, obviously, and where he wants to go. But I feel like every single time they've got him on campus and they've talked with him, it's progressed towards maybe better things to come in terms of news for LSU. Just your thoughts on Jonah Williams and kind of that two-headed monster of Brian Kelly and Jay Johnson trying to reel this big-time athlete in.
Yeah, he's a very bright kid. From everything that I've read and watched, listened to about him, he, I think, understands, like I think a couple other players in this class, like a Bryce Underwood, that the quick fix in terms of NIL and opportunity for the family, it kind of pales in comparison to what you could be at a place like LSU, where you can always have those opportunities and those resources, but also get developed by some of the best in the country, play against some of the best in the country on a year in, year out basis. And in Williams' case, that would happen in both sports. Like the SEC is a dominant conference in both baseball and football. We all know that. That's not any groundbreaking kind of news there. And Williams has a legitimate case that he can come in and be a great option for LSU on the baseball diamond as well. Like I believe his fastball goes 93, 94 from the left side. Like he can throw pretty freaking hard for a left-handed pitcher who also plays football. And so I know that's something that Jay Johnson would love to have on his staff is kind of a double dipper in terms of the threat that Williams could be on the football field as well. So look, if you look around, I think he's going to Texas this weekend, I believe, because, he did not make Texas one of his official visits this summer, but obviously Texas hired Jim Schlossnagle. I think Schlossnagle and Williams have a pretty good relationship. So we'll see kind of what happens out of that visit if Texas becomes more of a threat for Jonah Williams. But LSU would love to have him be a centerpiece of this class as well. And, you're talking about another top 10 guy here that LSU would theoretically land if they're able to close the deal on him. So really a great option for LSU. We'll see kind of what Blake Baker has up his sleeve, what Jake Olson and company have too, because I think he's kind of a tweener. He can be a linebacker / safety, somebody you can get close to the line of scrimmage, dropping coverage. He's a do-it-all kind of defensive player that I think would mesh really, really well with this defensive staff.
Not a bad time to be an LSU fan when it comes to football recruiting, and it's even a better time to join Go 24/7 and get that subscription. Look, as we kind of enter a little wave of recruiting that we're going to round out the month of July with, and then it's fall camp, and then right back into the football season. You're not going to want to miss all the analysis from myself, Glen West, and Sonny Ship over on the site and part of that 24/7 Sports Network. Which I shouted this out yesterday, Glenn, and we need to do a better job of this. Not do you just get great LSU content, but you get access to the whole network, which if you're one of those people that likes to read up on other teams, what's going on in recruiting, maybe what does Oregon think about on a guy? What does Texas think on a guy? Then, hey, it's a great place for you to check that out. And you get a nice little Paramount Plus subscription, which the wife and the 1-month-old are taking advantage of over there in the living room right now. So, hey, it's good stuff. And we can't wait to see you on the message boards. He's Glen West. My name is Bryce Koon, and we'll catch you next time here on the Go 24/7 podcast.